first things first, stance width. I mean, we're looking to have our feet positioned just outside of hip width. And so why hip width, why not shoulder width? Well, shoulder width can vary a lot more, you know, compared to, so everyone has a different build, but your feet are more connected with your hips than they are with your shoulders. So it would make sense to contain your hip turn as you're turning rather than worrying about where your shoulders are too much. So we're looking to have your feet just very, very slightly wider apart than your hips. So a good checkpoint is just the outside of your hips, over your laces, or on the inside edge of your laces. That way you can get contain your hip turn. Now if you go too wide, you'll tend to limit your rotation. It's harder to turn. It's also harder to get your weight onto your left leg when you finish. Whereas if you have your feet too close together, it's quite hard to contain that. You end up sort of losing balance and going to the outside of your feet, and you struggle to be efficient with your weight shifting and your movement. So, really important, both feet just slightly outside your hips. Now, in terms of how turned out your feet are, now this is really important because everybody is slightly different. So if your feet naturally point outwards in relation to your knees, you're going to want your feet slightly more splayed out than normal, than standard. And if your feet are slightly turned in relation to your knees, well, you're not going to want to be as splayed out. Now it's just being honest and looking at where you are in relation to your hips to your knees and your feet, your alignment. Look at what it is, because not everyone is completely, perfectly dead straight. And also flexibility as well. If you're lacking flexibility in your ankles, you're not going to want to be completely square on like this and blocking yourself off on the way through. So both feet slightly turned out. Now how much? So as a real rough guide point to start us off with our right foot we're looking at 5 to 10 degrees pointed outwards. Okay, that's not huge amounts. And on the left foot we're looking at more. You know, we're looking at probably at least double that. We're looking at about 25 to 30 degrees outwards. This is just a standard sort of checkpoint to start with. Now the reason why the left foot, again right-handed golfer swinging right-handed, the reason why the left foot is turned out more is because you're going to rotate through a lot more than you turn back. So on the way back your hips are only going to turn 45 degrees. On the way through they're going to turn 90. Okay, there's a lot more turn. That left foot needs to be turned out more to allow for that. This is providing you don't want to move your feet if you want a nice solid stable base, which is what most of us will want. So, feet slightly wider apart than your hips, both feet slightly turned out, left foot more than the right. Experiment with it, see where you are with see how much flexibility you got down there, see what your natural alignment is, and add or take off accordingly, okay? See what works for you, but what you generally wouldn't want to be is completely straight footed, because that tends to turn your knees in, tends to limit your rotation, it just makes everything more difficult. Okay, so that's stance width. Next up from that would be your spine angle. Now I see a lot of this, a lot of people with it back straight, sort of bum out, chest forward, shoulders back, trying to get into really good posture. Now, the problem with this is it actually locks your posture out. Now, when you stand with really good posture, with your hips locked without turning, try and turn your body and you'll find you can turn, however far you can turn. And then when you relax that posture, okay, and you get into more of a slump position, keep your hips locked and turn again, you'll find actually you can turn a lot more. When you're not locking your spine out, you can get a lot more rotation. Okay, downside to this, if you're in a relaxed posture, curved over posture, as you turn, your head will move and you'll come out of position. So how do we work around it? So we start with a very relaxed posture. And then as you're turning, as you'll see as we go through the drills, we go through the steps one at a time, you'll see how we actually extend and improve that posture as you go. And by extending and improving that posture, that allows your head to stay still. But your spine is still curved. But where it's curved forwards at setup, it's actually curved sideways at the top of your swing. It's curved down to the left. So you're always maintaining some kind of spine curvature which allows your vertebrae to rotate slightly, rather than being completely locked out and limiting your turn. So it's really key. So at setup, a good way to do this is get your lower back pushed up against like a wall or something, and then just slump your shoulders over, and then grip the club and just bend down until you get to where the ball is. And that would be a very relaxed setup position to be in. Probably feels awful to start with. We are literally putting you in really bad posture, but with a purpose, and that posture will improve as you turn. We are going to open you up, put you in a good posture position during the swing. But like if you used to whack a stake into the ground with a sledgehammer, you wouldn't necessarily start up here You go down and then you stretch every muscle you've got and then come back onto it again. Well, kind of we're going to do the same in the golf swing. By starting in a relaxed position and extending and stretching these muscles, we're going to be able to generate more speed. More muscles are stretched and primed and ready to fire. So, feet slightly more wider apart than your hips, both feet turned out left foot more than the right. Relaxed posture, okay? To start with, the whole leaning against the wall, low of the back against the wall, and then sort of slumping over, keeping that lower part of your back against it. To start with, that might be a bit much, a bit extreme. So just feel that you get into a more relaxed position. Feel your hips stay tucked underneath you, okay? They're not pushed out here, because it's going to be very hard to maintain that bum out position throughout the whole swing. It'll be very awkward and very limiting to your speed and your range of movement. So keep the hips tucked in underneath you, get a more relaxed position with your spine. It's going to be really, really useful. Now, in terms, we've got your grip, we've gone through that, we've done that, so we've got a good grip. Now your elbows, where are they pointing? Are they locked out? Is one bent, one straight? You know, are your elbow tips pointing outwards? Are they pointing inwards? You know, where should it be? So just really simple. Keep it natural. Okay, so when you grip that club, you should find roughly that your elbow pits, not the tip, or the tip, same thing really, but the opposite direction. Your elbow pits are pointing on a diagonal angle, like this. Okay, so 45 degrees. It's in a relaxed, natural position. You shouldn't be having to manipulate this. Now we do want the left arm straight, but straight doesn't mean locked out. Okay, locked out means tensing the muscles to get it straight. It can be straight without activating those muscles. So we have a straight left arm and a relaxed right arm. But relaxed again doesn't mean bent or straight. It's just in a relaxed position, maybe slightly off of straight. And both elbows are say at 45 degrees. Okay, so we've got the arm position, we've got a relaxed posture, we've got the stance width slightly wider than the hips. Okay, now distance from the ball, there's a rough guide with a 7-iron. You're looking at about 3 or 4 inches here. Okay, it's only a rough guide. Okay, everyone's going to be slightly different. Taller players might be further, even actually closer to the ball, because the taller player is going to tend to stand more upright. There's always some scope here for variation, but you're looking for roughly 3 or 4 inches with your mid-iron. You'll find naturally with your drivers, the longer shaft, you'll stand up more and you'll be further away. With a shorter club like a wedge, you'll lean down lower and you'll get closer. So we use the 7-iron as a guideline, get used to that, and the variations with the other clubs will happen naturally just because the length of the club kind of forces it to happen. So you're looking at a 3 or 4 inch gap there. Okay, hand position in relation to the ball. Hands over the ball, really simple. So you get a very, very small amount of shaft lean back because the club head is behind the ball. Okay, really simple. We don't want to be up here somewhere and we don't want to be behind it. It's a very small amount of shaft lean back as the hands are over the ball. Okay, which then takes us onto the ball position. Now, where should the ball be? Now, we want to swing the same every time, regardless of the club. Apart from the driver is the only club that can be different because it has a whole different set of impact factors. It's the only club in the bag where we might actually want to hit up on the ball. Every other club, including your 3-wood, you want to hit down on them, all of them. You look at your 3-wood, the face is very, very shallow. It's designed to hit the ball off the ground. It's not designed to be used with a tee. So, if you do use a tee peg with anything other than your driver, keep it very, very small. Okay, just enough to give you a clean lie, no more. Now, when we're looking to swing the same every time, we'll leave the driver for the minute. We want the club to bottom out in the same place every time. Now that position should be roughly opposite your left heel. You know, in the club and the left arm form a straight line opposite your left heel. That's the longest, lowest point, okay, just past impact. That's the deepest part of your divot, just before you start making your way back up and out again. Okay, so if the low point is opposite your left heel and you're hitting a pitching wedge, which is a shorter shaft, so you've got a steeper swing, this steeper swing is going to generate a deeper divot, a longer divot. So you need the ball back quite far to allow for that. So with a full wedge, I mean, pitch shots are different. You know, you can set up differently, open yourself up. We'll come to that another time. As far as full wedges go, you're looking at having the ball roughly in the middle of your stance, okay? Because it's going to be a long, deep divot. It's going to allow for that nicely. And when you come to like a 7-iron, a mid-iron, 8-iron, something like that, then you're looking at having the ball just slightly further forward. You're still going to take a nice sized divot, but maybe not quite as big. So you're looking at maybe, so if that's your wedge, look at maybe having it half a ball further forward to allow for that very slightly shallower divot. Then with your hybrid, you're looking at another, or maybe 3 fairway woods, you're looking at another half a ball further forward again. So you're only looking at being 1 ball further forward. It's not a huge amount, it's a very small amount because you're bottoming out the same place every time. The only reason we're moving the ball position at all is to allow for the divot length, divot depth. Because the shallower the shaft, the longer the shaft, the shallower the swing will be, the shallower the divot will be. And vice versa. So, wedge in the middle. Mid irons, half a ball forward from that. Long irons, hybrids, fairway woods, another half a ball further from that. If you do tee up a 3 wood or a hybrid, or like a long hitting hybrid, you may have the ball a fraction further again. Just because if you've got a very low tee, you would want to come in quite shallow. So just having it a little bit further forward again is going to make it quite shallow. But bear in mind, we do swing on an arc. The club will make its way around, out to the ball, and then back round again. So the further back it is, the more it's going to encourage a draw, because you're hitting out to it at that point in the swing. And the further forward you get, up to the point where it gets neutral, i.e. opposite your left heel, it's always going to be favouring a slight draw. So if everything is good, if you've got textbook swing, you should be hitting a slight draw. As soon as you get past that neutral point, the club's making its way back round to the left, you're then going to be favouring a fade, because you're going to be hitting across the ball. So if you have the ball too far forward in your stance, you may end up fading the ball. Now this is where the driver comes in, because this is where you can be at risk of that. So if you have the ball, as I see quite a lot, up on your toe, like this, and way behind the ball, that club is not going to be approaching the ball from the inside. Okay, that's going to tend to be cutting across the ball, and we're in real trouble. And the other issue with this as well is, I should move those out of the way for the moment, is with the ball that far forward, you'll tend to put the club up behind it. Your hands will be behind the club head, but you'll be very opened up. Because the ball is further forward, you'll naturally open your shoulders to get the club to the ball. So now you're setting up open, you're on a part of your swing where the club's on its way back round again, and you're going to be really prone to pulling it and slicing it. So we don't want the ball too far forward with the driver. Now, unless you make some real big compensations to allow for it, which would involve using a very high tee and leaning back and all kinds of stuff, and using an entirely different golf swing to what you would with your irons. I mean, it's just so far detached, it's not really what you want to be doing to be consistent. It can be done, and you can do it if you want to, you can look into that, and we'll go through it in another video, but just as a general guideline to start us off with, we want to avoid those extremes. So we have the ball on the hill, or even an inch or 2 inside. Okay, because the further back you are with your ball, the further away you are from this release point where the club starts to overtake the hand. That's the other risk with the driver, why so many people struggle with it. With the ball further forward, yes, we're more inclined to cut across the ball, but we're also more inclined to have started the release, like the crossover point of the release. We are releasing into your irons, but we're only in this stage of the release, the downward hit where the club is still open to the target. We get to that changeover part, and we're in serious trouble, because 1 minute that's flipping over, next minute you can feel it flipping and you hold off, and it goes everywhere. So to improve consistency, bring the ball back no further than the edge of your hill, and that's the low point of your swing, that's the neutral arc. I mean, that's still a bit risky, so I mean, ideally we have an inch or 2 inside of that. If you watch most tour pros, most of them are an inch or so inside the hill, or 2 inside the left edge of the hill, inside edge of the left hill. So an inch or 2 inside the hill. So now we're in a slower area, but we're not likely to hit up on the ball very well from there. But chances are we're still going to be hitting down. So how do we work around that? 2 ways to do it. Set up. Keep your hips where they are. Curve and tilt your upper body to the right slightly. This is going to encourage a more in-to-out swing and a more upward blow. Now, the in-to-out swing sort of gets you back into the draw area if you want to draw. But more importantly, it really helps you hit up on the ball. Also, we have a wider stance. The left foot's obviously always the same. That's our checkpoint. We're 2 inches inside of that. We move the right foot further out. Now that gets more of our weight behind the ball. Again, allows us to hit up on the ball. So, driver setup in a summary. Really, we're looking at the ball being an inch or 2 inside the hill, wider stance, and a very small amount of tilt away from the target. Just like 2 to 5 degrees, 10 at the absolute most. And that should pretty much get you in the right positions. Things to watch out for though, when you're tilting to the right like this, careful you don't have a high left shoulder. Okay, make sure that left shoulder still works down underneath your chin, okay, to maintain your shaft angles correctly. There is an alternative. We can stand more neutral, and actually make the adjustment during the swing, actually do it dynamically. And you can do that by swinging back like normal, because it's quite easy to do this normal now, but then on the way down, maybe nudge forward a fraction and then lean back with the upper body. Now that act of nudging forward gives you room to then lean back without moving onto your right leg, and give you that spine tilt so you can hit up on the ball. Now this is very advanced movement. There are tour pros that use this, and it's a good way to gain better numbers on your driver, to hit more up on the ball. But as you can see, it's risky. I mean, it's a dynamic change to your golf swing. It's not going to be the same as your iron swing. And even though it's probably the most optimal or the best way of doing it, it's also not the easiest way to do it. So to start with, I would suggest just start with a little bit of tilt with setup. And then as you're swinging, just make sure your left shoulder still goes low. Okay? And then maybe further down the line, if you're really happy and comfortable where everything is, you can maybe experiment with doing it dynamically, if it gains you a few more yards, and just see if it gets you more consistency. But it's something for you to have a go with.